Welcome to the Innovative Leader Podcast, featuring Christy Geiger, Executive Coach with Synergy Strategies, and David Phillips, Professor, Consultant, and Coach. All right, welcome to the latest episode of the Innovative Leader Podcast. Christy, hope you're doing well. And it's been a busy week and a lot of things going on. And today, one of the things we're going to talk about is how 4.0 organizations get things done. And there's a big struggle on how do we get things done, and why some companies are able to get those things done and why some struggle. And so we're going to talk about some structures, approaches, challenges, benefits of all this, and how we work to get things done. And as we were talking before, Christy, I was kind of telling you why this was really relevant to me, and the things that are going on culturally around me. And so I think this is a fabulous topic to talk about, especially in light of the how loose things have had to be in a typical organization because of COVID and because of the challenges in remote working and remote learning, and everything has been so kind of thrown up in the air. This is a good topic for us to talk about.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is kind of interesting, speaking of being up in the air, with the 4.0 organization. In a way, we'd have to marinate a bit more on this, but in a way, I believe that the situation of COVID-19 has forced organizations to be more 4.0, whether they realized it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of being a 4.0 organization means being more dynamic, more nimble, more quickly adaptive, working with your team and your leaders to go, okay, here's what I'm thinking. What are you seeing? Okay, here's what I'm seeing over here. So how should we adapt? What should we do about that? And so it requires people to more regularly communicate, and to talk, and to make decisions, and to make more frequent adaptions. Right. And we don't really get attached to things. We leave it pretty open. We try it and we adapt. We try it and we adapt. So really, a lot of organizations in this 4.0 era, with the at-home order, or I'm sorry, not the 4.0, in the COVID situation, we've moved workers at home. We've had essential workers that we've done this to help protect the health and well-being of essential workers. We've made these different adjustments, but not with the intention that they're forever, but knowing that they could be, but really addressing the present. And so right. I think you're right that even though we are sitting in this era of development of the business world, where we've been really comfortable in 2.0, and 4.0 has been growing, and as our millennial population really takes over, they really are the essence and embody kind of the messages in that 4.0 type style and approach. But really what's happening right now helps us to really better have a sense of what 4.0 feels like. And in a way, it can feel kind of chaotic and messy. And so we don't really like that, but yet we also see some benefits. And some people are really able to get things done, and really able to move the needle and be successful, and others aren't. And that's a great question to look at. Like, what is the difference? Why do some people adapt and thrive, and why do other people get stuck? So kind of looking back at those structures of 2.0 and 4.0, David, what stands out to you as some of those structures, the organizations that are having a hard time getting things done, moving the needle, adapting? What might be some indicators that show perhaps that they're still in a 2.0 mindset, and that they're not able to get things done because of some of the mindsets they carry? Granted, best intentions, but right. They're getting stuck. What's causing them to get stuck?
Yeah, one of the things that I've found in talking to people all over the country is how they react to questions. To me, that's a big one. How are you reacting to to the question. Some people are shutting down. Other people are thinking outside of this box, this framework that they've had, but and are really trying to come up with innovative new ideas to kind of handle all of this chaos. And so I think kind of an indicator for me is the curiosity, that the response to curiosity, and are you taking it as a challenge, or are you taking it as the way I think it should be taken, which is, we've got to find a solution to this. Let's entertain any question and see what we can do. So to me, that is a huge thing. So what are your thoughts on that, Christy?
Yeah, and I guess I just like to really constantly look at the difference, because for me, 4.0 can be such a airy concept to capture, to grasp. I like to keep looking at what was 2.0, what's 4.0, and to me, the questions and the curiosity is a way to approach it. And the way the 2.0 approaches that is more of a top-down telling, a dictating. Here's what we're going to do. This is what we decided. Sometimes it can trigger a bit of a lack of autonomy. It can trigger a little bit where people don't feel like their status is important, or that they don't have a say or a role in making decisions. And then to your point about solving problems and seeing a challenge to address, it's really, I think in that 2.0 lens, we're trying to fix a problem. Like there's a problem that needs to be fixed, versus in 4.0, it is a challenge to be solved, or a challenge to be overcome. So we see it as an opportunity versus a problem that is getting in our way.
And those are very two different mindsets, right? I mean, if it's a problem, we got to dismiss it and get rid of it. If it's an opportunity, we got to capitalize on it. And so, so that is a completely different framework and different way of thinking. And I, you see it as an opportunity. You see it as a mountain to climb. It's Mount Everest. It's a challenge. What do we got to do to overcome that? And so, so I think those are very real. From an approach standpoint, let's talk about that real quick. So, one of the things that I see in probably 2.0 framework is a lot of homeostasis. And so homeostasis is this organic term, right? It's a phrase that this is how the body tries to maintain equity within its system. So, an idea of that is you don't eat very much, your body produces the hormones that cause you to eat and be hungry. You exercise a lot, your body says, I need to maintain this calorie limit. So it's going to cause you to try to eat. It's a way to maintain balance within its systems. 2.0 leadership is very much like that, I think. Their approach is to maintain this in-box thinking, this homeostasis. It's like a thermostat. We set it at 70, and we want to keep everything at 70 because it's what's comfortable to us, right? It's what's easy for us. We don't even have to think about it. It's set it and forget it. It's like those old Ronco commercials. Remember those?
It feels efficient. I think there is a benefit that it's efficient.
Exactly.
And we're maintaining it. It's a wonderful thing. Yes.
Absolutely. And then 4.0 though is much different. If you go outside, there is no thermostat that will maintain that temperature for you. You can try to put heaters out there to warm it up. You can try to put fans out there to cool it off, but that temperature will not stay at 70. It will fluctuate. It will go up and down. It's the nature of an open system versus a closed system. You've got all of these forces that are coming in and impacting the temperature. And so the approach is, I think, to think outside of that box, to live outside of that box. And as we were kind of talking, it's like the difference in trying to drive a car versus flying a plane. That we are as leaders, we're kind of a conduit between the world and our customers and our stakeholders, and then our internal organization. And a 2.0 feels like we're driving a car to get from one to the other. The 4.0, it's like we're flying in a plane. And of course, that's multi-dimensional thinking, multi-dimensional levels, those kinds of things. And I think that's a really good analogy that you brought up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is fascinating because it kind of that structure is how are these two organizations set up? So in our structure of a 2.0, kind of taking that car analogy, it's very linear.
Right.
We're on a road. We've got a map. Here's where we go: left, right, north, south, east, west, whatever. There's rules and boundaries. The homeostasis is really what you were saying. Like, we are about trying to establish some regulations, some standards, some efficiency, so to speak. And that comes again from a very good place. I think that's the struggle with 2 versus 4 is there's things that we love about 2.0. We've grown to have this deep affinity for efficiencies, and we're prized for finding ways to maintain, to set it and forget it, to create those systems and processes. That's what we've been doing for a long time. And so 4.0 can seem so confusing. The airplane analogy is so good because there are no roads in the sky. There is no, you always fly at this altitude. No, there's different reasons to fly. It's very multidimensional, and there's a lot of variability to your decisions. And on one hand, there's greater complexity with 4.0, but yet at the same time, so I think in the 2.0 world, we can get confused because it's like, well, wait a minute. Okay, well, this is the rule. And when this happens, I'm supposed to do this. So how does that work in an airplane? So if you try to take car rules, completely transferring them to fly in an airplane, it feels very confusing. And so in the structure, when we try to take that structure, and then so if we take the structure 2.0, and then we take the approach of 4.0. So I've got this controlled room that's always 70 degrees and it's efficient and I can maintain it. But, oh my goodness, I need to be a 4.0 leader. So let me ask you some questions while we're in this 70-degree room. And let's think outside the box.
Right.
Let's come up with something new. What do you guys have? People cannot think about it because you can't take a 2.0 structure and a 4.0 approach and think that you're going to be a 4.0 organization.
Right.
You have to move over here to this 4.0 structure, which is outside the box. Like you said, fine, bring in a fan or a heater, an outside porch heater. You can try to give yourself a little bit order, but some people try to build in the screened-in porch and then bring regulation outside.
Yeah.
And so then if you're trying to regulate 4.0 by screening in your porch, now you've just made yourself 2.0 outside. Yeah. And so there's this structure of 4.0 that's very dynamic. You use the word open system. Right. I think it's a great word to really describe it. It's an open system. And then that approach of curiosity, asking questions, outside the box thinking. I think another difference in the approach is task versus people.
Right.
And that in 2.0, we have such a hard focus on task. And so in a way, this could seem like such an odd topic. If I'm in a 2.0 mind, how do I get things done? Well, obviously, we focus on the task. How are we going to get things done by focusing on the people and the culture and the needs? Isn't that just going to make us crazy and send us all over and get us distracted? It feels so confusing.
Right. But it is the way to get things done, because it means that you don't, that sounds very lazy. It means that you don't have to know everything and you don't have to do everything. It becomes, I'm going to invest in people. I'm going to listen to people. I'm going to actually see what needs to be done. That, and I think that's a big difference in the people part, is because with a task, we think we know what needs to be done. But when we spend time with people and build those relationships, we really know what our stakeholders need. So we know what needs to be done. and then we can take what needs to be done and then do it instead of just simply doing a set of tasks.
Good. And David, banter with me on that for a second, because sometimes as leaders, we've spent years developing our competency, and we've gotten our war wounds where we learned by tough knocks and the hard way, and we forgot things and we failed forward. And boy, we're at this place at this time because we've learned, and these other people, they don't know.
Right.
So how in the world can I ask them their opinion or their thoughts when they don't know? They haven't paid the same price that I have, right? So in the
Yeah.
2.0 thinking, our egos can get attached, and
Yes.
not just our egos, but our competency meters,
It's
where we're
challenged.
like, I
Yeah.
know this, you don't. How does that work?
Yeah. So this is so when I started my doctoral program, and I may have told this story before. When I started my doctoral program, the first day, my our faculty mentor or our lead mentor came in and he said, "I do not consider you my students. I consider you my friends and my colleagues. We're on a journey together to learn. It is not me who's teaching you. You teach me as much as I teach you." And so there's this humility that I don't know everything. And that is very hard for people who have spent their life fighting battles and overcoming obstacles and those kinds of things, because they have this mindset and they have this framework which has gotten them to a point of success, how they've had defined success. But and so when they get challenged, or when people come up with new ideas, it can push them. But I think that, to me, that was such an overwhelming statement for him to say, you know, you are my colleagues. I have to learn from you. And he was actually an older gentleman. He got married a little bit later in life and had kids later in life. And at the point when I was in his we were in class, he was probably in his 60s and he had teenage kids.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, he said, "The reason I know about all this stuff is because I learn it from my kids. The reason I know all about technology is because I learn it from my kids." So he saw even his kids as people who could teach him about the world and teach him about the culture, and that he could then pass on. He had a learning mentality to the point that they could teach him, and then he would go and build on it. And so I think you have to be a respecter of all persons, that everybody has something to teach you. And I think if you have that mentality, that's a humbling thing to think that that person is going to teach me how to do my job.
So I think what you're talking about is another key approach difference that I think is even going to require us to redefine words in a way, because I think for years, a leader is one to follow. A leader is one who has earned that position because they have the competency, the knowledge, the skill. So they're the leader.
Right.
You don't usually go, hey, I've got 5 kids. I've got the 18-year-old and the 2-year-old. Who's the leader? Obviously, the 2-year-old. No, it's the 18-year-old, because the 18-year-old has the experience, the knowledge, the training, so they can lead in the absence of the parent or whatever, right? So our paradigm of leader is the knower. The leader is the experienced one. And really what you were just describing is a flip upside down of that concept. And we might ask the question, so what then is the role of the leader? If the role of the leader isn't to be the one who knows, isn't to be the one who calls the shots, isn't the one to be the expert or the go-to, what's the role of the leader? That can feel very ambiguous and confusing too. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think the leader becomes a facilitator and an integrator. So he or she works to bring people together, and then they take what other people are sharing, and they become a master synthesizer or a master integrator. And what they do is, then they take it all and then they reflect it back out. And so they almost become like a torchbearer. They're not, they're the, so and so with a torch, if you're leading people in the dark, and this is one of the reasons I kind of love this illustration. If the leader is a torchbearer, then you're going to have multiple leaders, because you're going to have multiple torchbearers. You're going to have somebody kind of in front, pointing the direction of where to go, somebody in the middle, somebody at the end, always shedding the light on what's going on and pointing in the right direction. So you have multiple people who are leaders. You have multiple people who are torchbearers. And so when you think that way, that who can I call on to help guide this group in a direction? That's what maybe is a tour guide is actually maybe a better way to think about
That's
that.
the word I was thinking, right? Guide, but yeah. Go ahead.
And when you think of a role of a tour guide, they know a lot and they point out a lot, but then they also let other people ask questions and share what they know as well. So it's a very dynamic relationship, as opposed to, I know this is what we're going to do. It's here's, I've been this way before. Here's some things to look out for. Here's some things to consider, but I'm open to listening, and maybe we need to go another way. Maybe there's a better way to go. But there's a humility there that has to be there. And I think maybe in Good to Great, if we go all the way back to that book, one of the things that I think it was that Jim Collins talks about was the humility of the leader. That the best leaders, the great leaders, were not the ones that were super charismatic. They were the ones that had a level of humility that allowed them to get through and to listen. I could be wrong, but for some reason, I think I remember that. Of course, that's been 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, no, you sent my mind into the Patrick Lencioni, because he has that new book, Motive, and which is a great book, and it's really about things that leaders do right or wrong. And it's interesting because I think it kind of flips under, it's just a very, I think it's difficult to describe, because instead of being the leader, hey, listen to me, burp, 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 that type of a thing, the leader comes underneath. And right. I think the leader, as that facilitator of the conversation, like, it's an interesting dynamic, because does the leader still hold the vision? Yes. Does the leader still understand the direction of the target destination or the objective that the organization is trying to achieve? Absolutely. It also makes me think of some of those old comics, where you have a bunch of ants. Which way should we go? Oh, let's go here. Or, the cartoons with a bunch of kids and they're just on the great adventure, not going anyplace. It is more like the great race. There is a goal, there is a destination, and the leader is responsible to hold that information, but the leader is responsible to make sure the team is all fully connected. They're engaged, they're involved, their strengths are showing up, and people's skills are being utilized. And to your point about humility, it not only is humility, but it's this selfless, that rather than me being important and it being about me, I'm very invisible. I'm underneath there, and I'm like, okay, so what does Bob need in order to be working in his strengths and to be in his brilliance? And what does Jackie need to be in hers? And what does Sue need to be in hers? And whatever team you have, right? So there's a way that leader is underneath there, elevating and lifting up. Yeah. So it comes from a different direction, so that everybody is working in their brilliance. Right. And then in their brilliance, it's super dynamic. And that is where innovation, new ideas, and new creation is really birthed and found, because people in their brilliance are able to share. They're not minions who are relegated to their little assembly task. They are seen as brilliant contributors who have something to share from their unique perspective. And I think that kind of leads into the benefits. There's some challenges and benefits in these things, but the benefit is it is progressive. There's a lot of flow. There's more innovation, greater synergy, and really this meaning, significance, and passion that people are looking for in their work. So I don't know, when it versus, I mean, the benefit of 2.0, it's comfortable, it's traditional, people know it, we know how to navigate it, so we kind of default to it because we're so comfortable there. What do you see as kind of the benefits of the 4.0 or even the 2.0 and why we tend to default back there?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons we default back to 2.0, we default back there in times of crisis. I think that's a big one. That's a big reason that it almost seems efficient because it is efficient because one person is making a decision and you're following them and you're doing what they tell you to do. The challenge with that is you actually become a minion. You're not thinking, and what if it's the wrong decision? What if that person that's barking the decisions and barking the orders actually has no clue? so you risk those things. But there is a level of efficiency there in 2.0. But 4.0, I think, from an engagement standpoint, you're right. It's significance, it's purpose, it's meaning. We love autonomy. And it allows us to be autonomous and yet still be part of something bigger. Because we get to share, we feel like we are heard, we feel like we have a purpose and a function, and that when our ideas get used, when we speak up, our ideas get used, it's an encourager, it's a motivator. There's so much benefit in empowering people that way. And I think you come up with very formidable ideas to overcome obstacles and deal with the challenges that face you, because you've got the experience of the masses as opposed to the experience of one. And so the benefit of that is in a 4.0 leadership framework where you've got one hand in people and you're spending time with them and you're listening and you're learning, is, my goodness, you've got every how many years of experience of those people's lives combined with yours. And as a leader, if you begin to integrate all of that and start taking pieces and parts, and then you begin to put this idea together, this vision together, this challenge together, this opportunity together, and you go for it. Well, it brings the whole team along because they're engaged and it's theirs. And I think one of the things you were talking about coming under that leader, under that team, or under those folks, there's a difference when you're told to do something and when you decide on your own to do it. And I think one of the things that make a great leader is when they can make you think, when they can communicate in a unique way to help you come to that decision yourself, as opposed to you being forced to do it. And when you can,
which is that top-down telling.
Yeah. And when you can do that, when you can communicate as a leader and raise a whole team of people to come to this conclusion, not by telling them, but by empowering them, I think it makes a completely different, it makes the effectiveness and the innovation of that team so much better, because you're in essence, you're providing the framework, they provide the know-how and the action. You were talking earlier about 4.0 really doesn't have rules. I always think of HR, I'll probably get in trouble for this, as a framework, as guardrails. And as long as I stay between the guardrails, I'm in good shape. And I think that illustration comes from driving in 2 feet of snow one time. I was trying to get home and I was driving at 12 inches and blowing snow, and I could see the guardrails. And my thought was, if I can stay between the guardrails, I can get home. Because the road goes from guardrail to guardrail. So that was just my framework. And so, so as a leader, you provide some of those frameworks, some of those guardrails, and you let your team flow within those to make decisions, to overcome challenges, and to do it together. That's very confusing, I'm sure, but in my head, it makes so much sense.
No, I think it makes sense. I just think that in the 2-point rules and kind of those hard boundaries were very successful in 2.0 in order to drive fast. But
Right.
when you're in an airplane, the framework is not, there's no hard line. The framework is more your dashboard, and your dashboard tells you, are we on track with our values or not? Are we
Right.
headed north or not? Are we headed towards our destination or not? We're using a compass and other types of instruments in order to give us feedback to tell us if we're on track or not. There's not just, oh, because the rule was set, because the road ends, because there's a stop sign. There's not these rigid frameworks or structures.
Right.
It's more of a framework that is a guide, and there's a little bit more gray space to go
Right.
off and to come back. There's more margin there as well. There was something that you were saying earlier that I thought was a really good catch on motivation. And a lot of times leaders show up and they're like, wow, how do we motivate? We don't want to do this carrot and stick motivation. What's the deal? And in 4.0, there is an intrinsic motivation that's very natural, because you do get to contribute, because you do have autonomy, because you are working on something that you feel like you also are part of and have a say in. You're not just a minion. And a lot of times in the 2.0, you're a minion working your way towards leadership, and leadership is the destination. And until then, you're a minion. And then leaders have to motivate the minions by the carrot of being a leader or whatever it is, right? So
Right.
carrot leadership really comes more out of 2.0, because I just told you what to do. And now I have to figure out how to make you think it was your idea, so you're motivated, or how to make you figure, how to motivate you because you think it's so great and this is going to have a good benefit for you. I have to do a lot of work, because it's not in the natural framework. In the 4.0 framework, it's naturally embedded in that model, because they had voice, because they had, they were a respected contributor, and they were looked at as a leader, an equal leader in the game. And so they're naturally motivated because they're curious and they're
Right.
thinking and they're excited. So when they go home and at 10 o'clock at night, they're researching something or reading a book or trying to develop a skill, it's not because you asked them to, it's because they are hungry to learn, and that
Right.
came intrinsically inside of them. Versus in the 2.0, it's like, well, would you mind reading this book at home? And they're like, well, are you paying me? Whatever. It's this tough thing, because they're doing it because you told them to,
Yep.
or because they had to because of the job, not because they want to, because they're curious themselves about it.
Right. Yeah, there is that intrinsic curiosity, that intrinsic learning mindset. It's the brain that never shuts off, because it's always, even when you go to sleep, we come up with so many ideas after we sleep or as we're going to sleep, because your brain is because of the way your brain functions, and it's able to process things. There are nights when I can't go to sleep because I can't stop thinking about a problem, or I've thought about it all day, and then I lay down to go to sleep, and I finally come up with a solution, and now I've got to figure out how to get that down. And so I end up having to wake up, write everything down, build all that. That's the life of someone who is motivated, who is constantly learning, and who wants to do the best they can do. And I think that's a huge benefit, because really what you're asking them to do is to become the best person they can be, the best worker, the best programmer, the best that they can be. And it's a motivator to become the best, to not be complacent, to not sit there and do nothing, to not just take orders, to think and to come up with solutions that no one else can come up with because no one else has the experience that you have. So I think that's a huge benefit to rethinking how we do that leadership.
Yeah. And it's not easy. I think a lot of times we talk about how important it is to be 4.0 and how much we almost hurt ourselves when we can't get over there because we hurt our ability to innovate, or we hurt our ability to intrinsically motivate, or we hurt our ability to really adapt, and we shut down the ability to get things done when we're desperately trying to get things done. And I think there's a lot of compassion that we need to have for leaders and companies struggling to evolve from that 2.0 place. It is so entrenched in us. It's so known. And so part of this process is not, oh, yay, 4.0 people, bad 2.0 people. It's more, we're all in this evolution, and to understand, where am I showing up 2.0? Where am I showing up 4.0? How does that show up in my company, in the way that I talk, in the way that I act, in the way that I lead, in my culture? How is that showing up, to constantly be filtering for that? Because the more we move to that 4.0, even though it feels really squishy and hard to define, it really has the results that we're looking for in leadership and in business.
Yeah, it is 2.0 leadership is hard. It's very hard because you are the innovator. You are the decision maker. You are the one that is having to drag people in many cases along with you. That's hard work. It's stressful. It keeps you awake at night trying to figure out how you're going to do all of this. 4.0 leadership is a different kind of hard work, because your hard work is what's going on in Bob's life, and how can I motivate him this way, toward this goal, toward this aim. We have this situation at work. How can I get all these people together in so many different places at one time so that we can talk about it and come up with solutions, or come up with ways to get over this? It's a different level of work. How can I tell the story? What story can I tell to help motivate, or help lead, or encourage, or guide? And so I think it's just a whole different level of work, but it's hard work nonetheless.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it. It's a different hard work. There's leader hard work 2.0, and there's leader hard work 4.0, but they are a different kind of hard work. Yes. Absolutely. Well, we didn't really get to talk about the challenges, so maybe next time it might be a good topic to talk about more of the challenges and benefits of our 2.0 versus 4.0 evolution and migration. And hopefully this has given you a couple ideas on how to get things done as you reflect on, where am I in that 4.0, and what am I doing that might be helping us get things done or not get things done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so don't forget to subscribe to the podcast at YouTube, or at Apple Podcasts or Google Play. You can also listen to it at innovativeleader.co. And we hope you have a great week, and look forward to talking to you again.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Christy.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.